You damn bitch. If I'd known, I really should have known, I should have just sold my body. If I'd known, would I be in such a miserable state today?
This is a must-watch film for anyone who is married. Many call it the pinnacle of family dramas, yet it's a masterpiece. Many are too afraid to watch twice. 10 years ago, simply because she discovered her husband checking into a hotel with a female colleague, she chose not to confront them then and there, but instead opted for the most extreme form of revenge.
I'd like to report a crime. You want a hotel, a room on the 20th floor. There is prostitution going on.
It was this very phone call that would plunge him into an abyss from which there was no return, until his heart was pierced by 1,000 arrows. Due to a lack of communication, personality clashes, an ordinary family descended step by step into a tragedy of total ruin. After watching this suffocating yet thought-provoking story, perhaps you will grasp the root cause of this tragedy and the struggle of a woman crushed by the gears of fate. Protagonist Lee Baoli is a typical wife, beautiful and capable. She makes a living selling socks in the wholesale market, exuding the fierce and sharp-tongued energy of the city streets. Her husband Ma Shuwu is an intellectual who moved from the countryside to the city. Rising to become a factory office director, he is introverted and timid, yet obsessively protective of his reputation and social standing. Today is the day the family of three moves into their new home. Because the alley is too narrow for the moving truck to reach the building, the movers demand an additional handling fee. Having survived on the streets for years, Lee Baoli immediately sees this as a shakedown and instantly ignites a fierce argument with the workers.
I had an agreement with your boss, 150 yuan, to get everything inside.
She was unyielding in her words and remained overly critical during the moving process, hurling indirect insults at the workers. At this moment, as the head of the household, Ma Shu's reaction is telling. Instead of intervening, he took the head he had poked out of the window to watch and silently withdrew it, leaving the full burden of the conflict to his wife. Saying this, I believe Ma's act of recoiling is one of the most accurate portrayals of his character, revealing not just cowardice but a long-standing habit of avoidance. He outsources every trivial and embarrassing aspect of domestic life to his wife, while he seeks only to maintain his dignity as an intellectual. This fragmentation is the very first crack in the impending tragedy. Once the moving was finished, in an attempt to maintain his own sense of propriety, Ma privately pulled cigarettes from his pocket to hand out to the workers. He even asked his son Xiao Bao to buy sodas as a reward for everyone. This move instantly ignited Lee Baoli's long-suppressed rage. She erupted into a hysterical tirade against her husband in front of everyone.
I pay the money, they do the work. That's how it works. When they hiked up the price on the spot earlier, why were you so spineless? Now you're handing out cigarettes. Do they grow on trees? Does the soda come for free?
You're just born cheap in that moment of insult. Ma Shuiwu completely lost face. The workers left awkwardly. But before departing, a worker's parting words cut deep into his heart.
We might just be manual laborers doing rough work, but our wives at home are virtuous. We live much better than you do. In the outside world, you're supposed to be some kind of official. But look at what happened just now. You've been bullied by a woman like that your whole life. You truly are a miserable soul.
The reason these words were so devastating is that it's because he directly negated Ma Shuwu's only sense of social worth, defining his family life as a complete failure. For a man who is obsessed with saving face, this was a devastating blow. Consequently, Ma Shuwu remained stony-faced throughout that night. After a suffocating silence, he finally shed his cowardice.
I want a divorce.
Ma Shuwu's outburst is a textbook display of a passive-aggressive personality. He had repressed his dissatisfaction and anger for years, avoiding direct communication until a tipping point was reached, prompting him to strike back in a hurtful manner. His demand for divorce and sleeping on the couch weren't meant to solve anything. They were acts of punishment and defiance. This sudden resistance struck Lee Baoli with an unprecedented sense of panic. Advised by her military advisor best friend, she decided to swallow her pride to save her marriage. She made clumsy attempts at tenderness, taking off his shoes and washing his feet late at night. He even resorted to emotional kidnapping using their young son, having the child cry and beg his father not to be angry anymore. However, such moral kidnapping only deepened Ma Shuwu's disgust.
Don't be mad at Mom anymore. Stop sleeping on the sofa.
Her scheme failed, and a humiliated Lee Baoli lost her temper, revealing her true colors once again, venting her fury on her innocent son. The stifling domestic atmosphere drove Ma Shuwu to seek an emotional outlet elsewhere. Dolphin, a female colleague in charge of union welfare, became the light in his life. She was young, beautiful, and soft-spoken. The admiration and tenderness in her eyes were the very dignity and validation that Ma Shuiwu lacked in his marriage. The two soon began an affair. Ma Shuiwu's unusual habit of leaving early and returning late eventually raised Li Baoli's suspicions. She took time off work and staked out the gate of her husband's factory. Following them all the way, she finally witnessed her husband and Zhou Fen entering a hotel. In that moment, her entire world came crashing down. All strength left Li Baoli's body. She collapsed against the wall, sobbing uncontrollably. Lead actress Yang Bingjian mentioned in an interview that while filming this scene, she completely immersed herself in the role. That sudden sense of total depletion following betrayal was a visceral physiological response from deep within her. It wasn't just a display of acting technique. This immersive performance is exactly why this character is so authentic and heartbreaking. After a long period of emotional catharsis, the ruthlessness in her bones once again took the upper hand. She walked into the hotel, found out the room number, grabbed a fire extinguisher preparing to bust the door open. At this critical moment, the voice of a passing child calling for mom instantly snapped her back to her senses. She knew that if she broke down that door, her family would be shattered forever. She put down the fire extinguisher, went downstairs to the phone booth across the street, and made the call that would alter everyone's destiny.
I'd like to report a crime. It's a room on the 20th floor of the Dao Haiyun Hotel. There are people engaging in prostitution.
This phone call is the most bone-chilling moment of the entire story. Perfectly illustrates the stark contradiction in Li Baoli's nature. She wanted to save her home, yet she used the most devastating means to do so. She wasn't trying to win back her husband's heart, but rather to destroy his options, treating him like an object to be forcibly kept by her side. This call was made in the name of saving the family, but it was actually an act of revenge. After a surprise raid, it was confirmed that no money had changed hands, but the scandal of improper conduct had already become common knowledge at the factory. Zhou Fen was fired and Ma Shu was dismissed from his position as office director. When Li Baoli went to the police station to bail him out, she put on a shocking display of magnanimity in front of everyone.
Men. When a woman throws herself at them, who wouldn't take the opportunity? If a woman is dead set on him, he just can't resist. As long as I don't hold a grudge, isn't that enough?
From Chong on, the guilt-ridden Ma Shu never dared to mention divorce again, while Li Baoli, having seized this fatal leverage over her husband, regained dominance over the household and became even more overbearing. The full escalation of the conflict began when Ma Shu brought his elderly mother from the countryside to their new home without consent.
We just moved in and you just had to bring in another mouth to feed. The house is only so big, there's no room for this. Go find some whore outside to look after your mother for all I care.
Li Baoli's constant hostility and verbal abuse finally pushed Ma Shu to the brink. He went to see Zhou Fen one last time, clutching at straws, only to be told that the reason she was once with him was largely due to his status as the office director. More devastatingly, Zhou Fen revealed a hidden truth. The person who called the police to arrest them was his own wife, Li Baoli. This news plunged Ma Shu into total despair soon after. He received notice that he was on the first list of employees to be laid off. Stripped of his dignity and his lover betrayed by his wife, and finally losing his job, every pillar of his psychological support collapsed in a single day. Ma Shu walked straight toward the surging river, ending his tragic and cowardly life. When the police handed the soaked suicide note to Li Baoli, its contents left her utterly despondent.
Life is truly painful. There are some things I just can't face, Lao Liao. I'm sorry. I won't be there to care for you in your final days, and yet I must ask you to look after Xiaobao for me. Xiaobao, I'm sorry. From now on, you'll have to look after your violin yourself.
Every word is for his mother and son, yet he doesn't spare a single word for his wife Li Baoli. Ma Shu's suicide note can be seen psychologically as the greatest and final passive-aggressive act of his life. The lethality of this omission far outweighs any direct verbal abuse. He created an indefensible and irreparable guilt, imprisoning Li Baoli in this silent accusation for the rest of her life. His death was less about despair than a meticulously planned act of ultimate revenge at the cost of his own life. Yet her husband's death didn't seem to break Li Baoli. At the funeral, while everyone else wailed with grief, she didn't shed a single tear.
When I first saw your new apartment, I felt there was something wrong with it.
What's the problem?
Back and see for yourself. No less than 7 or 8 roads converge right under your building, coming from every direction. In Feng Shui, this is a specific formation, don't you know?
Wang Jian Quan Shin, faced with her savvy best friend's warning about the 10,000 arrows piercing the heart Feng Shui, she summoned her resolve and made a defiant declaration. I don't believe in that jinx, let's just go.
If they call this 10,000 arrows piercing the heart, I'll call it 10,000 beams of radiant light.
At this moment she was actually filled with fear and confusion. This was perhaps a form of self-hypnosis, a way to psyche herself up. It's the survival instinct of many ordinary women facing catastrophe, refusing to collapse because the elderly and the children depend on them. This slogan was her only weapon against fate. Though tragic, it was her shield, yet it is also brimming with the raw vitality of life. To support her mother-in-law and son, Li Baoli left a job and joined the ranks of the lowliest manual laborers, becoming a female shoulder pole porter. She carried this burden for 10 long years' time, carved deep furrows into her once comely face. Yet these 10 years of hardship did not earn her any warmth from her family. Her son Xiaobao was chillingly distant, and her mother-in-law never truly accepted her as one of their own. She even tactfully suggested Li Baoli move out before Xiaobao's college entrance exam. Shortly after demanded she transfer the house title to her grandson.
This house, you see, was left by Shuo. When can you find the time to handle the paperwork? Transfer the house to Xiaobao's name.
This plot is a poignant reflection of a common modern family tragedy. The provider only knows how to express love through material goods and hard labor, while the recipient takes it for granted, viewing it even as a burden. Li Baoli's 10 years were a decade of silent toil. She thought she had shouldered everything, yet she never truly reached her son's heart. To heal the trauma of his father's death, this led to a total emotional rupture after 10 years of agonizing struggle. The reward finally came. Xiaobao became the city's top scorer in the science stream. Li Baoli prepared a feast at home, believing her hardships were finally over. But this celebration banquet turned into a most brutal trial. Xiaobao brought out his father's funerary photo and raised a glass. Then he uttered those words that cut like a knife.
I'm toasting you. There, I've had a drink with you. From this day forward, you are no longer my mother.
You said it didn't matter.
It's all your fault that I've been fatherless for 10 years. Now that I've finally grown up and got into university, I don't want your money for tuition. I have a scholarship, and I can work for the rest. I don't want you to look after me anymore. This house was left to me by Dad. You move out, Grandma is moving in.
Overcome by resentment, anger, and despair, Li Baoli confronts her son on the rooftop. She slaps him hard, demanding to know why he is treating her this way.
I gave birth to you and raised you. I've spent most of my life living for you. Don't you have a conscience?
There, Xiaobao finally reveals the truth. He found a photo of Zhou Fen in a book left behind by his father and tracked her down before the college entrance exam. From her, he learned the full truth behind his father's suicide. It was Li Baoli's anonymous report to the police that drove Ma Shuwu to his death.
I only now realize how insidious you truly are.
At this moment, the 10,000 arrows shot into the air 10 years ago have finally, 10 years later, returned to pierce Li Baoli's heart with cruel precision. A long-held narrative as the victim completely shatters. She realizes she was the one who pulled the trigger of this tragedy. Xiaobao is one of the most complex characters in the entire film. It is easy to simply dismiss him as an ungrateful, white-eyed wolf, but he is also the direct heir and victim of his parents' tragic personalities. He carries his father's bottled-up resentment and long-held grudges, as well as his mother's capacity to hoard hatred for years, before delivering a lethal strike at the most critical moment. His revenge is a mirror image of his mother's actions from years ago, bringing the story's tragedy into a hopeless full circle. This sudden revelation causes this woman who has fought so hard all her life to utterly break down. She stumbles toward the riverbank to the very spot where her husband took his own life. Lost in despair, she thinks of ending it all right there. But the laughter of a group of youngsters nearby pulls her back to reality.
Old lady, could you take a photo for us?
At the moment you press the shutter to take a photo of them, looking at the faces in the camera laughing so freely, Li Baoli was moved like never before. She suddenly came to a realization. It seemed her own child had never played or run wild like others, or even laughed like that. This moment was Li Baoli's true epiphany. For the first time she looked at the past 10 years, not from her own perspective but from her son's. She realized that what she gave was not what he truly needed. She had deprived him not only of a father, but of the happy childhood he deserved. This deep guilt finally overcame her resentment and sense of injustice, leading her to finally let go. The next morning, she went home and calmly handed the property deed to her mother-in-law.
I've just been thinking, ever since we moved into this house, every single day has been heart-wrenching. Back then, when Mak Shuo asked for a divorce, if only I had just divorced him. Maybe if all this hadn't happened, everyone would be doing fine now.
She then picked up the shoulder pole that had been her companion for a decade and left for good. Waiting downstairs was the social outcast who had always cared for her, waiting in his dilapidated van. But before they could get far, the engine suddenly stalled and the van broke down. The film's final long take is a stroke of genius. Libioli doesn't complain, nor does she cry. She skillfully hops out, walks to the back of the van, and while cursing with the coarsest language, she arches her back. That back hardened by 10 years of carrying the pole, and pushes with all her might. Under her strength, the engine roars back to life, and the battered van staggers forward toward the unknown road ahead. At this moment, she is finally liberated from the fate of 10,000 arrows piercing the heart. She realized the radiant brilliance she once spoke of. This brilliance comes not from family harmony, or her son's forgiveness, but from the realization of life's harsh truths, and the tenacity and courage to keep moving forward nonetheless. Feng Shui is a film one barely dares to watch a second time, for it is so raw and real that it stings every soul who has ever struggled in life. There are no absolute villains in this film, only ordinary people caught in the traps of their own nature and the torrent of time. Each loves and lives in the way they believe to be right, yet together they forge the 10,000 arrows that pierced each other's hearts. Li Baoli is the personification of a character tragedy. Her strength, her brashness, and her need for control. She loves her husband dying and her son, but her love is suffocating. Lacking respect and empathy, she eventually pushed her husband away while building an insurmountable wall between herself and her son. Ma Xu's cowardice was equally a catalyst for the tragedy. For him, silence was not golden, but a form of escape and impotence. Ultimately, with his dignity stripped away, layer by layer, he chose death as his most absolute form of revenge. His suicide note was the coldest verdict on their marriage. Their son, Xia Obao, inherited his father's endurance and his mother's ruthlessness. Spending 10 years orchestrating a trial against his mother forced Li Baoli to taste the bitter fruit she herself had planted, bringing this tragedy to its full closing loop. At the same time, the film reminds us that the breakdown of any relationship is never the fault of just one person. When you point fingers at the other person, you should consider whether you too are using other means to fire invisible arrows at them. Life is inherently a mess of trivialities, and each of us may just be pushing our own broken cart through it. May we all learn from Li Baoli's departing silhouette, courage to break through adversity and the wisdom to reconcile with life.